Okay, welcome back. This is our 9th episode of the Christianese podcast, and this time we talk about speaking into each other's lives and what that means.
Yeah, and that's a phrase that I had actually never heard before, and the first time I heard it, I had no idea what it meant. And then when April explained it to me, I realized, oh, okay, it's friendship, essentially. That's what we all do.
Right.
I mean, we all talk to friends, you talk to your parents about your life, and you ask for advice, or they give you advice whether you want it or not. And so it's very much a relatable subject to everybody. And so we kind of talk about where does the responsibility lie, and how much input should we really have on each other's lives, and where does that input come from?
Yeah, and a couple of points that we bring out when talking about, those topics is there's two different voices that live inside of every single person, and that's your ego and then your heart. And so I think a lot of confusion comes in between like which one of those voices is talking and which one should you be led by, and which one is your mentor being led by too. So
exactly. And we talk about how the ego is very loud, it's chat 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 all the time, and the heart is very quiet. So it's hard to sometimes hear that voice. And so we talk about how maybe the real role of a mentor is not so much to speak into your life, but to help bring out the voice of your heart. So
perfect.
Enjoy.
Check it out. Kacie.
Don't be weird. What am I loving these days?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm kind of copying you from last time. I am loving this book.
Ooh.
Which is A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles by Marianne Williamson. And I love it because really, so far, I'm not that far into it, but it's all about love.
Why do you love love so much?
But I don't know, it's like here, open up, beautiful quote. God is not the author of fear, you are. It's all about how like all of our, like we are born, like we are love. Like love is the only thing that's real, and everything else is like an illusion that we've created. And so yes, it is the human experience to probably in the first however many years of your life pile all that on, and then peel it back off and try and get back to love, or return to love. But I don't know. It's just, and it's funny because I bought this book a long time ago, and I picked it up to read it several months ago, and like I got a couple pages in and I was like, nah, I'm not feeling this. I'll like put it away. And then I was like, recently I'm like, okay, let me give this another shot. And now I freaking love it.
Really?
So I think it really is like certain books kind of you're meant to read them at a certain time, and I just wasn't there yet before, and now it's awesome. So I highly recommend Return to Love.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of good things about that book actually.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
I'm giving it to you next. So that's what I'm loving.
Can't wait.
What are you loving?
So mine's really simple, and I don't know, this morning, so I drove past a sign at a marina, and it had a joke on it.
Okay, I love where this
is
going already.
I'm gonna tell you the joke.
Okay.
What kind of music should you play when you're fishing?
Hold on. I really want to think of this.
I'll wait.
Something with a lot of, something in the high seas.
Well, I like where you're going. You're getting there.
I'm saying something with a lot of bass because it's kind of spelled like bass. Okay, what is it?
Something catchy.
Oh.
That's so awesome.
That's a good one.
So then I called my dad just to share this joke this morning, and we ended up having a good laugh together, and it was simple and small and like a great moment of connection with humor with my dad.
That is a great moment.
So that's what I'm loving right now.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Okay, fear. Dun dun dun.
Fear. It's funny because when we were supposed to record this the first time
4 weeks ago,
we rescheduled it 87 times. April and her calendar.
Sometimes I just don't feel like doing it.
That's true. So when we were supposed to record, I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh, okay. And I had this fear popping up. You know, like they call it different things, like rock bottom, or in something like the dark night of the soul, like, and it's something as part of like the hero's journey that everybody goes through.
Like you have to experience that.
Yeah, so I start, and I hope I've been through mine, but I don't know. I started to have this fear of, oh my God, like what if I haven't? And like what if it's coming? But I've moved past that fear because I've then since been like, all right, well if it happens, it happens. Like whatever, I'll deal with it. And we were kind of talking about this earlier. So my fear more leading up to this actual recording was related to like finances stuff and essentially running out of money.
And that's because you have quit your job.
That's because I quit my job. So I have no income. So running out of money is a real possibility.
Yeah, that's not like...
Yeah, it's not like this weird
all this
fear.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the fear I've been trying to mentally work through.
Gotcha. How are you dealing with the fear?
Trying to just live more in a place of trust.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. What are you fearing?
So I would probably say, like, recently, a fear of, like, with what I'm trying to do with the Adigna and, like, I just have, like, a really big vision for this. Like, having a lot of people share their stories and, like, just be super real and raw and vulnerable so other people can hear that who are in the same place and really feel supported.
Right.
But then as I'm reaching out to people, a lot of people are like not ready personally to share on camera or at that level. Whereas, they'll share their story with me, but they aren't ready to record it and post it publicly, which I completely understand. Yeah. And so I think a fear of like, this not being as impactful as I feel like it will be, and
it's like a fear of failure.
Yeah, of it not happening. So, and I think that even though I feel that, like I'm still moving past it. Like I'm not asking people to still share their stories and not still trying, and I still definitely have hope for it in the face of that fear. So it's not stopping me, but it's there.
Yeah.
Which is all. Okay.
So now should we speak into each other's lives? Because I don't think that we do that enough.
I know, right? That's all we do.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that's a pretty Christianese thing to say.
Right. Actually, it totally is, because I remember the first time, and I'm not going to say who it was, but we were at that trivia night, and somebody said, we speak into each other's lives, and I was like, I had to ask him, like, what does that mean?
And she was referring to, like, a women's group who met, like, at church and stuff like that. Like, that's the point of them getting together, was to speak into each other's lives. So my kind of thoughts on this are really pretty simple. So I think that you're going to have to, let's go through, like, how it's talked about and how it's typically viewed, and then maybe just try and, like, argue with me. Like play devil's advocate. Yeah, for sure. Like, why on this side, so this is not like a 5-minute discussion. Yeah. Oh, I think it's this. Because we agree on what that actually, a different perspective of that. So, well, I'll just start off by sharing probably an example or two, because I grew up in church where that was very important, that you had people that you surrounded yourself with to speak into your life, and that was to help you stay on track, and so you didn't get like off track, living in sin or off God's plan or path for your life. And so just to take it out of Christianese language a little bit, it's a mentor. Correct. It is a religious mentor. Yes. Does the mentorship live just in terms of religion, or do they also typically advise on, say, career or relationships or non-religious things? So like, is it a life mentor or just a religion mentor? Definitely with religion, spirituality, God's plan are infused and around all of that. So like what's God's plan for you personally with your career? What's God's plan for this relationship? So it's
that's a good point. I just immediately like separated religion as one aspect, and then there's career and relationships, and that's not necessarily how everybody views it.
Not at all.
Right.
So it's like
more overarching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be friends too, like speaking into your life. But it was like really, I remember like really, a friend of mine had this like spiritual mentor, like an older lady in the church. And it's always like a woman mentor would mentor a young lady and a man would mentor a young man. So
was there a reason for that?
I mean, we just separate. We wouldn't even swim together. So I don't even
swim like in a pool.
Yes. We have to like probably talk about that offline a little bit.
Yes. I have so many questions.
So I just remember this girl or some of my friends having like a spiritual mentor and them sharing some of their conversations, and I felt like they just really had somebody in their corner who was trying to help them grow and become like, I don't know, the best version of themselves or whatever. And so I remember like praying for one, like, who is my spiritual mentor going to be? And
how do you get a mentor? Like, how is that paired up?
Like, how do you find one? Or
does it just happen organically, or like, do you formally ask somebody, or how does that work?
I think the first person that I talked to, I formally asked them, like, will you mentor me? And she said yes. I think she was like, I don't really want to be called your mentor. I don't think she wanted like the responsibility of that. But then like other people, one was a friend who was like not a mentor at all, but was speaking into my life, and she had said that she was going to speak into my life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal, established relationship like that. So I'll use my friend example first. So in my stories, really, I don't know. I think when you're in a same-sex relationship or have that attraction in church, it's just such like an outlier as far as like some of the other stuff that people get talked to about, that it makes it very clear to see like the lines, you know what I mean? As far as where people will draw a line. Yeah. Versus, I don't know, it's just, so I know not everyone has this type of situation, but so I had finally told my friends that like I was in this same-sex relationship, and I had hidden my previous several relationships, but I was finally at this point where I was like, I'm just going to tell them like that's what's happening, because they all noticed that I would withdraw myself and I stopped like coming around as much, and I would stop going to church because like in my interview for Yadigna, I said I separated those things out. So when I was in a relationship, I would kind of pull away. Yeah. So I remember like my friend was like, well, let's go to lunch. Like, I just want to take you to lunch and let's talk about it. So we went to lunch, and I remember just explaining like why this makes me happy, and just really trying to come from a very genuine place of like how I felt. And I will never forget this. She looked across from me at the table and said, God does not care about your happiness. And she said, he wants your obedience. And so that made me so angry. And she was like, listen, I love you. I care about you. You're living in sin, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you. And so from her perspective, she was wanting to help me and to save me, because what I was doing, she felt was wrong, based off of like what we've been taught, the Bible. That's a whole nother topic. So in her mind, she was doing the right thing, even though it was hard to like try to save me, basically, from sin.
Okay, so all right. So this is no different than anybody who talks to their friends for advice. There's just a little bit more of a formality to it, it seems like,
I would say,
in terms of speaking into each other's lives.
Right. Okay. Well, and like from a Christian standpoint, I think it's like almost like a responsibility. I don't think like us as friends, like I don't take that as like a, well, I have to like tell Kacie. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's this.
Okay. Expand on that. Like if you were my mentor and you were speaking into my life, responsibility, do you mean like, do you feel responsible for responsible for like meeting with me frequently, or responsible for what I do or don't do?
I think responsible for like at least pointing out where you're wrong.
Okay. All right. So that maybe answers my next question, which is going to be, is it typically under the kind of goal of point out where someone is wrong and steer them back to right?
Yes.
You answer that quickly. Like, is that what it's about?
I think so. And this is my perspective, but, and I even remember telling you this, sitting at that coffee shop in the courtyard, and I overheard a woman, an elderly woman, talking to a young girl who was really distraught about a relationship that she was in, and it was just a very Christianese language was being spoke throughout the whole conversation. So I knew it was one of those types of relationships where she was coming to this lady for some advice, and I just remember the woman was just like, no, you should not be seeing him, and the girl just was crying, and instead of asking her any questions about anything, she just said, nope, you really need to cut that off. You need to start listening to more Christian music to really help rein your thoughts in. And I just felt the girl, I could see defeat on her face, just like deflated and not hopeful. So it was more of like she's trying to help her and maybe even to get back right, like in a better place, but to also save her from some pain or some mess or...
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And two, I think that there's a lot of scriptures like in the New Testament where, and I feel like this comes from people other than Jesus. I feel like this was later on in the New Testament, like 1st and 2nd Timothy, like and Peter, like
or talk about
like
the responsibility
of Christians
to point out when people are doing something wrong.
Yeah, to help each other out in that way where it's like, yeah.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts about?
So my first thought is that if I was your mentor, mm-hmm. and I'm here to point out when you're going wrong, that's judgment. Because I'm deciding that what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
And we talked about in other episodes that judgment is separation from God. I just don't think that it's on us to judge each other.
Right.
So I think if that's kind of the point of it, then that's where I was like, oh, but it's like very judgy. But we do that. We always do that. I mean, whether you're in Christian circles or just like two girlfriends talking on the phone, like we do that. We think like, oh, you're going down a road where you're going to get hurt, or this is wrong, or whatever, and then we want to like stop the other person. Yeah. So then I think it kind of comes back to like, I don't think we're supposed to not talk to each other about our lives. So then it comes down to what I always bring it back to is like, what is your intention behind the advice that you're giving? Because if your intention is, I want to stop you from what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I think that you're wrong. I want to change your mind on something. Then mm-hmm. that's judgment. Right. But if your intention is more to be there to listen and to like encourage and support you, mm-hmm. and to help you think through things maybe from different perspectives, because that's always easier for an outsider to do. Yeah. Right. So really just more ask questions to help you navigate your own heart and come to your own decision instead of mm-hmm. tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. Because if I tell you what to do, that means one, I think what you're doing is wrong, that you're incapable of coming to the right decision. Mm-hmm. But also, and this kind of goes back to what we talked about way earlier in the earlier episodes when Katie was there, it's like I do think we have to experience life. Mm-hmm. Like that's how you learn. Yeah. So and we've all struggled with this, and I've struggled with this in my own life. It's probably been one of my mother and I's like biggest issues and her intention is nothing but love and wanting to stop me from getting hurt.
Right.
But if I'm in a relationship that is not a good relationship and I get out solely because somebody else told me to get out, am I really out of that relationship? No.
You didn't learn anything.
Well, and I'm not really over it because it didn't run its course for me. And so then I'm always still going to be thinking about what would happen. I may be eventually going to like blame that person for ruining it. Like you have to learn for yourself that what you're doing, and I'm not going to say is wrong, doesn't work for you.
Correct. Yeah. And it has to, because if you get out of the relationship prematurely and haven't had that aha moment for yourself, then you're going to find yourself back in that same cycle.
Exactly, because I haven't learned my lesson.
Right.
Like I haven't learned it yet. So,
well, and even with that girl, like in that courtyard, I mean, I sat there, I couldn't even read my book. I was so drawn to their conversation, and my heart just went out to her, and I naturally had so many questions, just from a curious standpoint, like, well, you know, why do you love him? And like, what are you drawn to? And like, where's the tension in that? You know, I mean, just even those questions, you're right, could help her start even thinking about, and as a friend, even asking those questions.
Exactly, because I think if we go back to maybe kind of the bigger goal is to move things from a place of fear to a place of love, if those are the two kind of like opposing forces, so to speak, then your role as a friend or a mentor when you speak into somebody's life is to help them navigate that, not because you're deciding what is fear and what is love, but more ask questions and help them maybe just do that on their own. But it's not telling them what to do because you think what they're doing is wrong.
Right. And I think that's what's fueled a lot of that.
Yeah.
Especially in church. And I think it goes outside of church, even in relationships too. I think
every day, like we constantly want to do that. Yeah, like parents do that, friends do that. Like you want to say, well, no, like you should do this, blah blah blah. But if you ask, like, why do I think somebody should do something? It's because I think what they're doing is wrong, and so then that's judgment. So really, you should accept people for where they are and try and encourage and support them. To like navigate that themselves.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, and two, I think that it can really be, especially for someone like myself, did not trust my own inner voice. Like, I did not trust it. I didn't know how to. So I was always looking externally. I think that's why I wanted a mentor so bad. Like, if somebody could just tell me what to do, like, I'll follow that. Like, I can do that. And that's what I did my whole life, is just like, oh, this is the right path. Okay, let me do that. Oh, this is the right path. And it never felt like, I was always searching for peace and always searching for freedom, you know? And but that puts you as the one receiving that guidance or advice or information in this very vulnerable space. You're putting your life and not taking the responsibility of thinking and feeling and trusting that for yourself into someone else's hands. And I just remember one lady who was like a really well-known spiritual leader, I'll say, told me once that I had this this charisma about me, and that it's trouble, it's bad. And I never heard that, and it just made me like inherently feel not good about myself. Yeah. And then I was told also, because I was like, well, when I started to use my voice a little bit, and I was like, well, I don't feel that way, I don't see that. I was told that I was then rebellious for not listening to her, you know, and following her guidance. And so then I was like, am I rebellious? So it was almost like, well, it's like this expectation.
Made you question yourself more. When in reality, I think a mentor should help you get in touch with your inner voice, your true self, your gut, your heart, whatever you want to call it, but not try and tell you where it should be going, but more help you build that trust with yourself. So that again is then not focusing on like the actions, but more like who you really are.
Yeah. And I think that because like this goes back to like some of the original teachings in church, is like humans are born into sin. So we're born inherently bad and needing fixing. And I think that that's probably why.
But I think that goes back to that's a different definition of the word sin. I think humans born into sin means like we are born separated from God because that is our experience here. Because we aren't humans, like we are our soul or spirit or whatever you want to call it. So
in a body,
right? And so that's our experience. Like we're born into that because that is the experience here, that we're separated from God and we've got an ego, and so we then we go through this whole process of developing our ego, and then we're supposed to then unpeel all of that and return to love, which is one with God.
Love.
God is love.
Yeah, that's the human experience. Born into sin, born into that separation, and then trying to go back to that oneness, that wholeness.
Right, and that's the whole point. And you've got to learn all that. Like, you have to learn all that. You can't just be told. Like, by one of my mom's favorite sayings is like, you can't put an old head on a young body or something. And you can't. And I think that's the whole
true
point. Yeah. And so then as you get older and you learn all these things the hard way, you want to tell other people who are about to make or go through the same mess that you went through, like, don't do that, trust me.
Yep.
But they've got to go through it. Like, they've got to learn it.
And I think I love what you said about like coming with the intention to support and listen, and from that place, I think it's very different, because then you were talking about asking them questions to help them discover what the truth is inside of them. And I think that's like the job is to create an awareness that's not there yet.
Yes.
So it's like helping them wake up a little bit. Yeah,
point out things they maybe haven't thought of. Ask questions, like make them dig deeper into themselves.
Within their own thought processes.
Yes. Not implanting thoughts into them.
Yep.
So really not like speaking into their lives, but more bringing out their heart. Ooh, I like that.
Come on.
I like that. And cut.
Mic drop. No, I love that.
Okay, so then what? But what would the argument be?
Well, and I think it goes back to that. If they believed in, if you're able to grasp that new definition of sin, or the different perspective of sin, then that makes a lot of sense. But I think that, playing devil's advocate, it's the fact that the heart is wicked above all things, and we talked about that in one of our previous podcasts. But there is still, I think, this notion that you can't trust that voice inside oneself, and so you got to help a person. Now, here's the thing about that: there are two different voices that you have to learn to discern between. So there's like the ego,
fear,
which will totally run you into the ground and like exhaust you, and that's all fear-based stuff, and striving and trying to prove yourself, and it's all illusion. But then there's this other voice that's like in you, that's truth, and it is from love, and both exist in there. And I don't know if that's trusted enough.
Well, it's really hard. It's really hard to discern them. And
so I think the mentor is like, okay,
mentor
you can't
helps
figure
you,
it out, so let me tell you what's
so it's like exactly so people say, oh, the benefit of a mentor is like, oh, it's an outsider's perspective. Yes, but not it's an outsider's perspective on like the life that you're living and the choices you're making. It's an outsider's perspective from like your ego, fear thoughts, and your like love, soul, heart thoughts. So they can help you try and figure out what thoughts belong in which camp.
Where they go. And the way that they help you is by asking questions and not finger pointing.
So what are the Jesus quotes about like listening to yourself or trusting your own thoughts? Did he talk about that?
I'm trying to think if he did.
Or did he talk about anything of like external guidance versus internal guidance?
As far as personally, I'm not sure. I just know that he was always trying to refer people to work on the inside first for themselves. Always like when it comes to like why are you trying to fix everything on the outside? Which is like what a mentor would do. It's like, no, you don't need to be in that relationship. You need to start listening to this music, that sort of thing. And that's fixing that external. Whereas Jesus was like, that's like, you're like a whitewashed tomb. You look great on the outside, but you're empty on the inside. And so I think he always kept trying to get people through the parables to like start with your heart first. Like even the parable of the rocky soil, when he talks about some receive word with like, they're excited at first, but then the soil's so rocky that like nothing can grow. It withers and dies because of the sun, the trials that come. But the good soil represents an open heart, can produce 30, 60 to 100 fold of whatever is planted in there. It like produces a return. But that he's referring to like a person's heart, like their own heart in that. So I think he's like, what is the condition of your heart? Like that's where you need to focus. See, this is a Christian article, and it's talking about, is that really the leader you want to follow? Is your own heart? He said, I know my heart tells me that I should have the desires that I have. Well, that's your ego. That's not your heart.
Right.
You know, and so this is a pastor writing this, so he's confused even about like the two voices that are going on, you know, inside. But he's saying, you know, your heart has likely said things that you don't wish to repeat. I know mine has.
So that's a great, okay.
My
that's
heart
a
likes
great
to think
point.
the best of me and the worst of others, which is not your heart. That's your ego.
No, that's your ego.
So I think there's a lot of confusion with that.
For sure.
No, our hearts will not save us. We need to be saved from our hearts. So that's why I think that
so that's like assuming any thought in your head is coming from your heart, and that's not true. If anything, the thoughts from our heart are really hard to hear because we've developed such a ego, which is the whole process we're going through. But I mean, it's loud and it's nonstop. Yeah. That's not your heart. You hear your heart when you get quiet.
Yes. Be
still.
Still. And know.
Be still and know. Is that a Jesus quote?
It's not it's a scripture, but it's not a Jesus quote. Yeah.
Well, I like that one.
Be still and know that I am God. I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's where it really. Let's see, and this guy goes on to talk about the heart is deceitful above
so
all
in that
things.
case, so yeah.
And so that's why God gave us the Bible. Here's shut up. But I think that's where the confusion comes in, is like, okay, the heart's deceitful, you can't trust it, so we really need to like pursue what God tells us in the Bible. That's what's right, and we need to do what's right. And so that's all taking it externally. And that's not, to me, that's not having faith at all.
Right.
That's not faith. That's not trusting.
That's having faith in something else, not having faith in yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, if we're one with God, as Jesus said, not having faith in yourself is the same as not having faith in God.
Right.
Because we are one. Yeah, that's such a huge, I think, confusion of things that our ego says, which way back in the day when the Bible was written, they didn't
have that.
They didn't know about the ego.
Right. But science now is like,
right,
and psychology and all that.
Right. So they're just thinking, oh, I'm having these like impure thoughts.
Right.
Right. Those are thoughts. That's not your heart. You can trust your heart. Right. Don't trust your ego. And so if anything, a mentor is supposed to help guide you in terms of what is ego, what is heart. Don't trust ego. Find your heart.
Yeah. You know, I got the most help probably going to a counselor who wasn't a Christian. I asked her, I was like, are you a Christian? And she was like, I'm spiritual. I can be a Christian. And I was like, what does that mean?
Okay.
Like coming from, and she was like, well, I just feel like it's all one. And I remember just feeling peace in her presence, and she would just ask me tons of questions. And she was like, but why is that wrong? And who said that's wrong? And where did you get that under?
Sounds like me.
Yeah. But really, I was like, wait, why do I think that's wrong? And then she just really helped me start thinking through the process. And I think that I don't know, I began to get such clarity, direction, and I started to feel peace that I've never felt before, and like felt, I don't know, power can get like a negative word, but like a good kind, like strong, strength.
Yeah.
Whereas like before, I think I felt really weak and like I could break at any minute. And I just think that how she, I don't know, counseled me was, I have never had anyone
just by asking questions to help, to guide you to go deeper into yourself, not to guide you in a different direction.
Right. And she knew the right questions to dig me deeper. I would want to go off this way, and she was like, but why? And she'd dig me like, you're right. It wasn't external. It wasn't like, well, do you think you should be going over there? Or like, it had nothing to do with
right,
that.
because
like,
well, don't you think you should, that's judgment. Mm-hmm. So whereas guiding you to go deeper in yourself is like just wanting to understand you, which is acceptance and love. Like that's a much better, it's like, okay, like I want to know about, like I want to know, and I want you to further know yourself. You want to get to know things that you like, not like, oh no, you're bad, don't do that, do this. That's judgy.
Right.
So if somebody can buy into kind of a different definition of sin, and kind of defining it in any other way is judgment. And if somebody can buy into the concept of the ego, because I know that, I feel like the first time I said that word, like we were like, well, that's not talked about in church, so we're going to need to define that.
Right.
Now we've talked about it in several episodes. So, but if you buy into those, and maybe you don't have to, but if you buy into those, then I think this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. Because the ego is like, wants what it wants, like, period, to make yourself feel better at whatever cost that is, like just to keep you comfortable, to keep you above, better,
to keep you safe,
up here, like, and I think that when that's the intention, it's always going to lead you down a path.
And because the ego is fear, and your heart, your soul, whatever, is love. And so again, it goes back to moving from fear to love.
I have a friend, it's really, it's her lesson to learn with walking through all of this. And, I ask a lot of questions, and a lot of times whenever I read something, that she'll pop into my mind, and I'll just send her a screenshot of whatever I'm reading, and she'll respond back, thank you so much, like this was written just for me, and that's how I try to support her. And then I find myself at times getting frustrated with her because I want her to, like, I see the needless suffering that she's going through, and it hurts my heart for her. Like, I'm like, you don't have to like hurt like this, but she has to do this like on her own.
And so then that's your work to do, is to, her work is getting through it, and your work is, how do I get to a place of acceptance? And not being frustrated, and not being annoyed that she's not listening, and not being like, oh my God, come on, is she really still in this? But just acceptance. This is where she is. I'm here to encourage and support, help and ask questions, but not any of the negative emotions that come. And that's hard to do.
It is hard to do, especially
as the speaker into people's lives. It's hard to not come from that place of judgment.
It's true, because I think you're standing outside of, you are not as close to the situation as they are. They're right here, so they can't see the full picture, and you're like way out here, and you're like, oh, I can see all these pieces.
And it's not your path. That's their path.
Exactly.
Your path is different. Your path is how you view them on their path.
Is to love her. And like how I love her through whatever she's walking through. 100%.
But I mean, I feel like you looking at it from a place of like, it hurts my heart knowing she's hurting, that's different than she's doing something wrong.
Right.
So there's always like different layers. You get into all these different layers of how to really then love and accept someone, because your intention is good, but it's not total acceptance.
Right. And you know, that made me think of this. Like, this is a different thought of how to view this too. And I think from a Christian perspective, like, I think people would argue this, but if you're really honest with yourself, you want to save the person. Like, you then want to save them from going through whatever.
Right, which is exactly your it hurts your heart. Like,
yeah, right. And that's not my role. My role is not to save her.
Because the question is, like, let's say you wanted to save me. Why? Why do I need saving, in your opinion?
That's a great question.
Because I'm doing something wrong, which is judgment.
Yeah.
Looking at someone and thinking, I need to save them. If you strip it down, like, it's on the surface level, it seems like a good intention.
It looks like,
but if you dig deeper into it, why? It's because I think what you're doing is wrong, which is judgment.
That's true. Yeah.
It is not acceptance.
And you know, I think like a lot of like the teachings are built off of right versus wrong, and that's either you're right or you're wrong. And it's like this, Adi Ashanti talks about this too, and that's that dualism, this there's it's one or the other, either or, and that's an illusion. It's both and there is, and I think that's why God, Jesus tells us over and over not to judge. Judge not, lest you be judged. Like, he says it over and over again, because you can't say right, and that's what judgment is, right versus wrong. Like, you can't do that, because that's not how anything's built. We're all one. We're all like, there is no either or. I don't know, that's deep, but anyway, is that good?
I think so.
Do you want to end with that quote? Because I love that quote that you...
Oh, yeah. So it's Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk. And the quote is, listen with only one purpose, to give the other person a chance to empty their heart.
I love that. If we all did that for each other and had that in return from someone else, I think that we would then... You know, it would create space to have that stillness and that quiet, so you could hear that voice of truth that's within you.
If you knew you were in a safe, judgment-free zone. The truth would always bubble up. And so I think, so if we were going to change the phrase, we would change it from speak into each other's lives to bring out each other's hearts.
Bring out each other's hearts.
Every time you do this.
I can't see that far back. Do you think we got enough outtakes? I don't know. We were pretty tame in that one.
You were very tame.
Wrapped around my breast. External versus internal.
I'm hungry.
I don't have any like peeled almonds in there for you.
F&A, man. Where are my almonds?
So there's actually wine in these cups. Hashtag winning.